Han Li cast his gaze across the foul swamp and immediately sensed that the baleful qi within it was several times denser than that lingering in the air. Like ravenous beasts, those sinister currents were surging madly into Shi Chuangkong's body, while the swamp itself dragged him ever deeper into its embrace. Fortunately, a purple jade spirit pendant hung at Shi Chuangkong's waist. Even without immortal spiritual power to sustain it, the pendant continued to release a faint protective glow, shielding its master by instinct alone. Otherwise, Shi Chuangkong's physical body would have long since been eroded and shattered by baleful qi. Yet an object was still an object. With no power to replenish it, the pendant's light had already thinned to the brink of extinction, clearly unable to endure much longer. Once it was exhausted, Shi Chuangkong would sink into the mire and perish without a trace. Han Li had never held Shi Chuangkong in particularly high regard. He had deliberately kept his distance, wary both of exposing his own identity and of the many secrets Shi Chuangkong carried. Still, there was no hatred in his heart. After a brief moment of hesitation, Han Li swept his sleeve through the air, releasing a surge of azure light that wrapped around Shi Chuangkong, attempting to haul him free from the swamp. The instant he did so, a terrifying opposing force erupted from below, dragging fiercely in the opposite direction, intent on pulling Shi Chuangkong deeper into the mire. Han Li was startled. His gaze sharpened as he activated his infernal devilish eyes and peered into the depths beneath Shi Chuangkong. Earlier, his spiritual sense had detected only faint fluctuations and an overwhelming concentration of baleful qi. No lurking demon beast had revealed itself. Yet the moment his eyes pierced the swamp, Han Li's expression changed drastically. Without hesitation, he shot skyward like a streak of lightning. He had barely left the ground when the earth below trembled violently. Massive bubbles surfaced across the brown swamp, bursting one after another. In the next instant, the ground split open into nearly 100 enormous sections, each more than 100 feet wide. They rose like black lotus petals, layer upon layer, converging toward the center in a deadly bloom. Had Han Li not sensed danger in advance, he would have already been devoured by the earth. Though he escaped the hidden terror beneath the swamp, Shi Chuangkong was still on the verge of being completely swallowed. What in the heavens is that? Han Li's brows knitted tightly as he summoned the azure bamboo cloudswarm sword. With a decisive slash, he sent forth an incomparably sharp streak of azure sword qi. Golden lightning coiled around it as it roared downward. A brilliant explosion of golden light followed, accompanied by a deep, thunderous rumble echoing from within the swamp. The mire detonated violently. Han Li activated his reversal true axis, weaving through the air to evade the flying debris as he descended, seized Shi Chuangkong by the collar, and retreated at full speed. After ascending more than 1,000 feet, a sudden, searing pain flared in Han Li's arm. Looking down, he saw more than a dozen slender black tentacles clinging to Shi Chuangkong's back. From them, countless hair-thin black threads had split off, many of which had already crept onto Han Li's arm. Through the tiny wounds they inflicted, an intensely aggressive, baleful qi surged into his body like a raging tide. Han Li's expression darkened. At his command, the flame of essence appeared atop his shoulder in humanoid form, slid down his arm, and descended onto the black threads. The moment it touched them, it opened its mouth and unleashed scorching silver flames, which raced along the threads until they reached the tentacles on Shi Chuangkong's back. As the tentacles ignited, a pungent stench filled the air. They immediately detached themselves and plunged back toward the swamp below. "Burn it all," Han Li commanded. The flame of essence leapt into the air, spread its arms, and transformed into a silver fire raven that dove downward. It slammed violently into the ground, and silver flames erupted outward in every direction, engulfing everything within several thousand feet. From high above, Han Li watched as the land shook violently, collapsing inch by inch. In the end, nothing remained but a colossal crater spanning several thousand feet. Its task complete, the silver fire raven returned and perched upon Han Li's shoulder, reverting to its humanoid form. Yet its little face was puckered, devoid of joy. "You don't like it here?" Han Li asked softly. The tiny silver figure nodded repeatedly. "I don't like it here either. Go back, we'll leave at once," Han Li said with a faint smile. In a flash of silver light, the figure vanished. Hanli stowed away the azure bamboo cloud swarm sword and glanced down at Shi Chuankong, whom he still held by the collar. Only then did he notice a blackened patch of skin at the back of Shi Chuankong's neck, a clear sign of baleful qi infiltration. Hanli frowned slightly and sped off in a chosen direction. Throughout the flight, his infernal devilish eyes remained active. After some time, he descended into a valley he judged to be relatively safe. Upon landing, he turned Shi Chuankong over and examined him carefully. A massive amount of baleful qi had already accumulated within his body, and the injuries he had suffered earlier in the True Mantra sect ruins were severe. There was no chance he would awaken on his own. He might survive for now, but without treatment, even if no more baleful qi invaded him, his physical body would be ruined, ending his cultivation path entirely. So be it. I've already saved him. I may as well see it through. Whether he recovers fully will depend on his own fate. With that thought, Hanli produced a long-incised black pill that emitted a faintly spicy aroma. It was a baleful quelling pill he had refined earlier. Difficult to make and exceptionally effective at expelling baleful qi, it could only suppress, not eradicate, the root of such corruption. He had only 2 left, including this one. After a brief hesitation, Hanli pressed the pill into Shi Chuankong's mouth and guided it down his throat. Pain immediately twisted Shi Chuankong's features, his brows furrowing as a muffled groan escaped him. A sizzling sound rose from the wound on his back, and wisps of black, baleful qi began to seep out. Hanli observed him briefly, then stepped aside and sat down cross-legged. He first examined his own arm, and confirming the injuries were minor, summoned an immortal origin stone to replenish his depleted immortal spiritual power. In this accursed land, absorbing the world's origin qi was impossible. Immortal origin stones were his only option. Time flowed on, darkness gradually enveloped the sky, and the baleful qi within the surrounding gray mist grew ever denser. Hanli opened his eyes, surveyed the area, and produced a stack of array plates and flags. Before long, a formation took shape, generating a golden hemispherical barrier that enclosed both him and Shi Chuankong. Shi Chuankong remained unconscious, showing no signs of waking, but the pain etched upon his face had eased slightly. Wisps of black smoke continued to rise from the wound on his back and disperse into the air. Hanli lifted his gaze toward the heavens. Beneath the night sky, the clouds had darkened further, deepening the oppressive aura of this place. Within those heavy clouds glimmered a string of murky, glowing orbs, 6 moons hanging silently above. Hanli lifted his gaze to the heavens. Where 6 moons lay hidden behind roiling dark clouds, a thought stirred in his heart. He removed the heaven-controlling vial, set it upon the earth, and waited for moonlight to descend. Time passed, yet the vial remained still, devoid of response. Frowning faintly, Hanli glanced skyward, then let out a self-mocking smile as he retrieved the vial and hung it back around his neck. Though 6 moons ruled the firmament, their radiance could not pierce the heavy clouds, and thus the vial's spirit liquid could not be born. After surveying his surroundings, Hanli raised his right hand. A luminous floral sigil bloomed across his fingers, and a towering door of silver light opened before him. As it parted, brilliant radiance poured forth, accompanied by rich world's origin qi tinged with azure, sharply contrasting the bleak gray of the outside realm. Stepping through, Hanli appeared within the bamboo residence beside the Golden Lotus Pond, where Mo Guang stood, waiting by the stairway to the 2nd floor. Questioned by Hanli, Mo Guang smiled and revealed his intent to speak. With a hesitant air, he confirmed Hanli's suspicion. They were now within the forbidden Gray Realm, a place shrouded in secrecy, even among immortals. Mo Guang claimed only fragmentary knowledge, gleaned from tales heard long ago, and spoke of the dangers posed by the omnipresent baleful qi. He offered to traverse the Gray Realm in Hanli's stead, hoping to ease his burden. Hanli declined calmly, stating that he could still endure for now. He instructed Mo Guang to remain within the Flower Branch domain until the situation outside became clear, and asked him to inform him should any path back to the true Immortal Realm be discovered. Left with no choice, Mo Guang admitted he knew of no such method and withdrew upstairs. Hanli watched him go, then glanced briefly at the corpse of the Gray Immortal lying within the building. Entering a secluded cultivation chamber, He set up an aura concealment array and sat cross-legged in silence. Upstairs, Mo Guang likewise settled into meditation, his thoughts unfathomable. With rare leisure at hand, Han Li began to tally the harvest from his journey through the true mantra sect ruins. He first refined Ren Hao's storage ring, spilling forth immortal origin stones that he calmly stored away. Numerous pills followed, recovery and cultivation aids, along with a rare vial fit for mid-high zenith cultivators. To Han Li, they were commonplace, yet to others, they were priceless treasures. The ring also contained water attribute materials, fragments meant to mend scale armor, and a striking blue crystal pulsing with profound water law power. Though many of Ren Hao's greatest treasures had been destroyed, Han Li uncovered a crimson bead engraved with 9 flame patterns, the 9 Destructions flame bead. Remembering its fearsome might, he carefully set it aside for future use. Next came Gongshu Tian's fiery storage bracelet. A vast trove of immortal origin stones emerged, including several dozen mid-grade stones, filling Han Li with quiet satisfaction. Pills of the high zenith stage followed, most familiar to him, some obscure. Though too potent for immediate use, they promised great benefit in the future. Scriptures and jade slips revealed fire attribute arts, foremost among them the great heaven incinerating arts, complete with cultivation insights. Han Li skimmed the numerous secret techniques, then turned to maps, charts of multiple immortal regions that spared him future hardship. Finally, he examined several envoy tools and set them aside, unconcerned within the Grey Realm. Among the spirit materials lay a 10-petaled golden flower, radiating warmth like the rising sun, certain to nourish his spirit garden. Gathering all newfound plants together, Han Li's attention settled upon a palm-sized silver box, sealed by an exquisite golden talisman, its patterns dense and profound. Recognizing it as a seal meant to restrain terrifying natural flames, Han Li's eyes glinted with anticipation, knowing that whatever lay within must be extraordinary. Han Li stood quietly, eyes deep in thought as he gazed upon the round silver box and the golden talisman sealing it. After a brief silence, his hand flicked through the air, forming incantation seals that sank into the talisman. With a faint crack, the seal fell away and the silver box sprang open. In that instant, scorching heat surged outward like a raging tide, sweeping through the chamber and sharply raising the temperature. Nestled within the box were 3 beads, each the size of a longan, 1 crimson, 1 orange, and 1 purple, radiating searing warmth. Rainbow fire pill sand? Han Li murmured inwardly, uncertainty flickering across his face. Ancient records spoke of rainbow fire pill sand as a supreme fire attribute treasure, appearing in 7 hues corresponding to the rainbow. Each grain surpassed natural flames, capable of melting mountains and boiling seas. Born of heaven and earth, they might emerge in lofty skies or abyssal depths, impossible to track or replicate, their rarity rivaling that of profound heavenly treasures. Yet only 3 beads lay before him, unremarkable in appearance aside from their heat. Doubt lingered in Han Li's heart. Just then, silver light burst from his shoulder. The tiny silver figure leapt forth, circling the open box in wild excitement. It nodded vigorously at Han Li while gesturing frantically, its eyes never leaving the beads, as if afraid they might vanish if it blinked. "I can let you have them," Han Li said after a moment's thought, "but since their nature is still unclear, you may consume one first. If nothing goes wrong, the other 2 will be yours as well." The silver figure rejoiced, nodding furiously before returning to the box. It paced around it again and again, clearly torn over which bead to choose. Han Li chuckled softly and left it to its indecision, setting the silver box aside as he examined the remaining spoils. Had this been Jin Tong, all 3 beads would have vanished the moment his back was turned. The Essence Fire Raven, however, had always been obedient. Gongshu Tian's massive sword and 10 fiery flags had already been secured, along with several other treasures, most of them ungraded. Only a golden bell stood out, a 9th-grade immortal treasure infused with time law power. Once refined, Han Li learned that shaking the bell unleashed golden ripples that suppressed spiritual sense. Those with weak spiritual perception or cultivation below early high zenith would be completely immobilized. Against time law cultivators or mid-stage high zenith experts, however, its effect diminished, explaining why Gongshu Tian never dared use it against him. After sorting through the items, Hanli glanced back at the Essence Fire Raven. One of its hands rested on the crimson bead, the other on the orange, while its gaze remained fixed on the purple, indecision still written all over it. Smiling faintly, Hanli produced a white talisman taken from Gongshu Tian. He had sensed its unusual aura earlier, and upon inspection discovered it to be an 8th grade immortal treasure, capable of defending against spiritual sense attacks. The very tool Gongshu Tian had used to resist his spiritual sense cage. This talisman drew directly upon the user's spiritual sense. The stronger the mind, the greater its might. Hanli pressed it to his glabella. White light flashed as it merged into his consciousness, transforming into a white mountain etched with flickering runes. At its core gleamed golden characters. Imperial Peak Spirit Restriction Talisman. Next, Hanli produced a golden plate. The moment it appeared, overwhelming time law fluctuations filled the room. Even the silver figure glanced up briefly before returning its attention to the beads. The plate's surface was covered in intricate patterns, a golden needle at its center spinning endlessly, each rotation washing it in golden radiance. Hanli attempted to refine it, only to fail entirely. Too high a grade? He wondered. Before he could think further, violent energy erupted behind him. He spun around to see the fiery silver figure clenching its fists, head thrown back in a silent roar. Blazing red light poured from its body, shaking the concealment array violently. With a beckoning gesture, Hanli drew the silver box back to him. Only the orange and purple beads remained. The crimson one had been consumed. A thunderous boom shook the space, though the array barely contained it. The Essence Fire Raven lay sprawled on the ground, swelling rapidly as it reverted to its true form. Crimson flames cloaked its body like armor, intertwining with silver fire to produce heat so intense that even Hanli was taken aback. The array shattered. The bamboo building trembled violently. Mo Guang's eyes flew open as he sensed the heat. He rose instantly and fled the building, brows deeply furrowed. Inside the chamber, walls and floor scorched under the flames, threatening to burst apart. Hanli hastily erected layers of azure barriers, forcibly suppressing the raging fire. Across the domain, bamboo forests rustled violently as leaves rained down. Spiritual chi surged through underground roots, revitalizing the scorched bamboo walls. The pond before the building churned like boiling water, golden lotuses swaying as white mist poured forth, shrouding the area in ethereal fog like an immortal paradise. At the Spirit Medicine Garden, Taoist Shi was jolted from meditation and rose atop its bamboo building to observe. Within the chamber, crimson flames slowly merged into silver, their power steadily diminishing. Relieved, Hanli rebuilt the surrounding restrictions. At last, the flames vanished entirely. The Essence Fire Raven had transformed into a hovering silver sphere, etched with pulsing crimson patterns. Joy filled Hanli's heart. These were indeed Rainbow Fire Pill Sand, yet the Raven would clearly remain dormant for some time. After briefly informing Mo Guang, Hanli departed for the Spirit Medicine Garden. "What just happened, fellow Taoist Han?" Taoist Shay asked. "The Essence Fire Raven consumed a bead of Rainbow Fire Pill Sand," Hanli replied. "No wonder," Taoist Shay mused. Hanli smiled and produced numerous storage tools. "I haven't time to sort these. Aside from items containing time law power, take whatever you like." Taoist Shi nodded, surprise flashing across its usually calm face at the sight of the pile. Amused, Hanli bade farewell and tended to the garden, planting his newly acquired spirit herbs. He carefully planted the remnants of the twin birth tree and watered it with prepared spirit liquid, knowing revival was unlikely without the heaven-controlling vial. But it was all he could do. Mindful of the dangers of the Gray Realm, Hanli did not linger. Soon after, he emerged from the Flower Branch domain, returning once more to the outside world. 7 days and 7 nights passed like drifting clouds. Hanli remained secluded within the valley the entire time, and he gradually realized that the heavens above this place were eternally shrouded in dark clouds, indifferent to the passage of day or night. By day, 3 blazing suns hung high in the sky. By night, 6 full moons loomed overhead, never waxing nor waning, forever frozen at their peak. Under the oppressive cover of those dark clouds, Hanli found himself unable to refine even a drop of spirit liquid from the heaven-controlling vial. At times, thunderous rumbles echoed from deep within the clouds during the night. stirring a sense of hidden menace, as though terrifying beasts lurked within the heavens themselves. Yet nothing ever emerged. One morning, dense gray mist surged up from the earth, causing the baleful chi permeating the surroundings to grow even heavier. While Hanli sat in meditation, a faint cough suddenly reached his ears. His eyes snapped open, and he saw that Shi Chuan-Kong had finally regained consciousness. Shi Chuan-Kong struggled upright, then cast a glance at Hanli before carefully examining his own storage treasures. A puzzled expression soon surfaced on his face as he asked softly, "Why? Why did I save you, or why didn't I kill you?" Hanli replied flatly, "I don't believe it was a demon beast, at least not one we're familiar with. It was a creature native to this realm," Hanli continued. "What place is this?" Shi Chuan-Kong asked, surveying the surroundings. "If my judgment is correct, we were dragged into the Grey Realm through a spatial vortex within the ruins of the True Mantra sect," Hanli replied. Though he had only suspected this upon arrival, all he had observed and all he knew of the Grey Realm now confirmed his conclusion. "The Grey Realm?" Shi Chuan-Kong exclaimed, disbelief flashing across his face as he examined their surroundings anew. After a long silence, he let out a bitter smile. "To think I would enter the Grey Realm in such a manner." "The baleful chi here invaded your body earlier. I fed you a baleful quelling pill to suppress it, but some residue remains. Now that you're awake, you should be able to deal with it yourself," Hanli said. Shi Chuan-Kong frowned. "Why give me such a pill? Would it not have been better for you to let me die and take my treasures?" "You are no ordinary devil cultivator. You are closely tied to the vast origin house, aren't you?" Hanli asked. "So you saved me from my status?" Shi Chuan-Kong scoffed. "That doesn't sound like you, fellow Taoist Li. Regardless, you owe me your life. Once we return to the true Immortal Realm, I need you to mobilize the vast origin house's resources to help me find someone," Hanli said calmly. Shi Chuan-Kong met Hanli's gaze and sensed no deception. Conflicted, he asked, "That's the only reason?" "There's no point discussing this here. I'll explain once we return. The vast origin house is, at its heart, a business. Reputation matters to it," Hanli replied. At last, Shi Chuan-Kong nodded. "I'll help you find that person, and if you ever face trouble in the future, I'll do what I can." "What conditions?" Hanli asked. "None," Shi Chuan-Kong replied with a faint smile. "My life isn't so cheap." "Good. Rest here a few more days, then we leave and find a way back to the true Immortal Realm," Hanli said, closing his eyes once more. Shi Chuan-Kong studied him for a long moment, shook his head, swallowed a pill, and began meditating. Several days later, the two departed the valley aboard Hanli's green jade flying carriage. Even after days of travel, the land remained uniformly gray and lifeless in tone, the terrain scarcely changing. Hanli stood at the front of the carriage, watching the scenery blur past. Yet the realm was not truly barren. Vegetation thrived, insects crawled, and small beasts roamed freely, all nourished by baleful chi as mortals were nourished by origin chi. "This truly is the Grey Realm. We may be in danger," Shi Chuan-Kong muttered. "Why so?" Hanli asked. "I've heard the powers of this realm bear deep hatred toward cultivators of the true immortal and devil realms. If our identities are exposed, we'll be hunted," Shi Chuan-Kong replied gravely. "In that case, disguises are in order," Hanli said. Forming a seal, black light erupted from his body, engulfing the flying carriage as countless strands wrapped around it, releasing streams of dark runes. The carriage turned pitch black, its aura surging with baleful chi. "You're also a master refiner?" Shi Chuan-Kong praised. "A superficial change is easy. Altering auras is harder," Hanli replied. With baleful chi saturating his body and Mo Guang at his side, Hanli could easily pass as a gray immortal. Shi Chuan-Kong, however, was another matter. "Leave that to me," Shi Chuan-Kong said, producing a white bead and casting a seal upon it. The bead released a spinning vortex that devoured surrounding baleful chi, its light swiftly turning gray. Hanli glanced at it briefly, surprise flickering in his eyes. After half a day's flight, the terrain flattened into a vast grassland of dark gray, wheat-like plants swaying like ocean waves. Suddenly, Hanli halted the carriage and looked ahead. In the distance, a massive procession advanced, dozens of carriages drawn by rhinoceros-like beasts, escorted by thousands of towering humanoid figures with lizard heads and gray scales. At the rear, tens of thousands of gray deer with translucent, coral-like antlers were herded along. It was a migrating tribe. One of them radiated Grand Ascension aura. At last, they had someone to question. Hanli dismissed the carriage as gray mist surged from his body, his aura transforming completely into that of a gray immortal. Shi Chuankong swallowed the bead, gray chi erupting around him as his eyes darkened. Though imperfect, his disguise was convincing. As they prepared to approach, a thunderous boom echoed ahead. "Fortune smiles upon us," Hanli said. Vanishing in a flash, Shi Chuankong followed closely. Chaos had erupted within the procession. 7 enormous gray birds, bat-like with draconic heads, descended from the grassland depths, their black claws slashing toward the deer herd with murderous shrieks. "Fall back!" A chilling roar burst from the foremost carriage, and a towering humanoid lizard shot forth like a thunderbolt. His frame dwarfed his kin, his round, human-like face cloaked in gray scales, and a vast Grand Ascension aura rolled outward like a storm tide. With a sweep of his arm, radiant gray light surged forth, condensing into a bone sword that screamed through the air toward a charging gray bird. The creature shrieked as it twisted aside too late, its abdomen ripped open by a deep, bloody gash. Moments later, 3 more figures emerged from the other carriages, each radiating body integration auras. Bone treasures flashed as they struck back at the remaining birds. In response, the gray birds screeched fiercely, unleashing storms of gray wind blades, while their black claws glowed and clawed toward the bone weapons. Chaos erupted in an instant. The convoy shattered into disorder as the gray deer fled in blind panic, while the humanoid lizards scrambled to herd them away from the battlefield. The gray birds held the numbers, most at the body integration stage. Though the tribe's chief stood supreme in strength, he was pinned down by 3 birds at once. The remaining 3 lizard warriors were pressed hard by 4 enemies, barely holding on thanks to a gray bone shield that blocked the worst of the assault. Even so, defeat loomed close. "We're finished, Chief," the shield-bearer cried after barely deflecting another savage strike. The chief saw their peril clearly, yet he was bound fast by his own foes. Then, disaster struck. One warrior faltered for a heartbeat, claw projections tore into him with a howl of pain. Ripping deep wounds across his body and nearly severing an arm, he was flung away, their formation shattered. A gray bird shrieked in triumph and gave chase. Rage flared in the chief's eyes as he poured power into his bone sword. The blade whirled, swelling into a roiling sphere of gray light, sword chi roaring so fiercely that space itself rippled. 2 birds recoiled at once, but the third dove forward without hesitation, black light pouring from its beak. At the chief's command, the gray sphere detonated. Swordlight exploded outward in countless fine streaks, engulfing everything within thousands of feet. A shrill cry cut off mid-air as the gray bird fell lifeless, its body riddled with holes. Yet the chief staggered as well. Black holes pierced his left side, baleful chi spreading rapidly, numbing half his body. Before he could recover, the remaining 2 birds struck again, claws flashing. Terror seized the tribe. If their chief fell, their end would soon follow. At that instant, a streak of gray light descended from the heavens, piercing both birds in a blink. Threads of light followed, shredding them to nothing. Simultaneously, a black flying sword appeared above the other warriors, its sword chi erasing the remaining birds in an instant. Silence fell. From the sky, Hanli and Shi Chuankong descended calmly. The chief's expression shifted in shock as he hurried forward and bowed deeply. "Thank you for saving the Gray Lizard tribe, esteemed immortals." His brethren followed, eyes filled with reverence. Hanli merely nodded, saying they were travelers passing by. After learning they stood within the 6-moon grassland and hearing of the gray tide storm, he accepted the chief's invitation to rest. The tribe knelt as one as they descended. Though puzzled by such reverence, Hanli asked no questions. Orders rang out to restore order and set camp. Soon, Hanli and Shi Chuankong were led to a massive floating carriage, lifted by gray runes and clouds. Inside the grand tent, silence reigned. White antler tea was served, fragrant and steaming. Hanli praised its taste, discreetly diverting it into his domain. Delighted, the chief hastened to offer more hospitality, grateful beyond words, to the immortals who had altered the tribe's fate.